Good morning, everyone. Oh. I'm the Reverend William Levwood. My pronouns are he and him. It's always wonderful to be with you every week on Sunday morning. As we begin our service, I invite you to center yourself for worship by taking a deep breath. We open and welcome to the ancestral people of this land, acknowledging that our church, like all of Burke, rests on the unceded territory of the Manahoac tribe of the Great Sioux Nation. We seek healing and the realization of justice with the people of this land who live on and their descendants, the present-day members of the Monacan Indian Nation, the Patawomic Indian Tribe of Virginia, and the Piscataway Indian Nation. We honor the ancestors as we move toward healing so that all together shall one day know full justice. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our chalice lighting. We'll say the words on the screen together, though I imagine if you've been here the past few weeks, you're getting a sense of them. These are from our mission statement. Together we care in community. We pledge to care in community. Together we pledge to grow in spirit. Together we pledge to act for justice.
Welcome to Accotink Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Sheila Doles, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm happy to be here this morning. If you aren't new to Accotink, look around. Do you see people you haven't met or haven't spoken to in a while? These people like you and want to meet you. Help us live up to our mission to be a welcoming and inclusive spiritual home for all by reaching out and making a connection. By visiting this congregation, newcomers are in a transition moment, and people in transitions are more open to new friendships. This means that your new best friend might be here this morning, and this is your chance to get to them before somebody else does. Whether you're a longtime member or a newcomer or something in between, we encourage you to stay for our social hour online and in person immediately after the service. We're so delighted that you decided to join us today. Welcome.
Well, whether you answered that question about creativity or not, you probably picked up on the fact that that is our new theme for this month, creativity. So we're going to introduce that today by exploring creativity, how to nurture creativity in ourselves and in others. Next week, we're going to look at the creative abundance that can be found in communities of many kinds, both natural and human, enthusiastic and reluctant, barren and fertile. And then the following Sunday, we'll get theological and we'll look at how images in the forms of idols and icons can enhance or inhibit creative living, depending on our approach and whether we're really committed to that dynamism and the changing nature of life. And then finally, we'll close out the month with a lay-led service that I'm so excited about, where members are going to share reflections inspired by Mary Oliver poems about wholehearted living. People love that. Mary Oliver is big in Unitarian Universalism.
Good morning. Good morning. So nice to be here. The weekend's been beautiful, and I've gotten so many summer vibes, so it's just going to get better. So, all right, so today we're going to talk about mistakes and their link to creativity. So, but what is a mistake? You know, I was thinking through this myself. What is a mistake? So I got on Google and I actually found a really great article on mistakes. And it was in Psychology Today. It was a Mel Schwartz article. And he says, generally, a mistake is a decision or an action that we come to regret. Mistakes usually cause some degree of pain loss, or struggle. Certainly, we might agree that we don't like the consequences of a choice, and hence we call it a mistake. The irony is that these events, which we try so hard to avoid, may be precisely what we need to experience. And then he goes on to say those insights born out of what we call mistakes are necessary for our psychological, emotional, and spiritual growth. They are also a fundamental part of our learning process. So, I thought young people and grown-ups of all ages, we all need to know that, right? So let's watch a quick video called The Book of Mistakes by Karina Lukin.
The Book of Mistakes by Karina Lukin. It started with one mistake. Making the other eye even bigger was another mistake. But the glasses, they were a good idea. The elbow and the extra long neck, mistakes. But the collar, ruffled with patterns of lace and stripes, that was a good idea. And the elbow patches, they were a good idea too. The bush was another good idea, dark and leafy so that you couldn't see through it. To the frog, cat, cow thing, another mistake. The big space between the ground and the bottom of the girl's shoe was a little bit of a mistake too. But the roller skates, those were definitely not a mistake. The second frog, cat, cow thing made a very nice rock, and the girl with the very long leg looks like she always meant to be climbing the tree. Even the ink smudges scattered across the sky look as if they could be leaves, like they'd always wanted to be lifted up and carried. And what about the girl? Do you see how with each mistake she is becoming? Do you see now who she could be?
Reminds us that the way we look at the world and ourselves is always a work in progress. So today in our spiritual development for children, we are going to do something called upcycling. So we've cleaned out our art supplies in the supply closet, and we have all kinds of leftover arts and crafts from old projects. So we're going to explore all of those ends and pieces and create something new and beautiful.
Find a quiet, dark space. Give them an open field in the moonlight. It could be a skateboard park or a notebook full of blank pages for writing out those hard feelings born of soft longings, for sketching out flights of fancy that become the dreams you travel on for the rest of your life. And then go deeper, journey down and down and down into the tunnels in the cave of the heart. Find yourself there. Find a home there. Find true friendship there. In the heart, through the heart, from the heart, between hearts. This is the way to journey. This is the way to go safely into the unknown until uncertainty becomes your most trusted companion, becomes the source and the pathway, the home and the journey.
So I found that quiet, dark space or that open field beneath the moonlight when I was 13 years old, alone in my bedroom, exploring movement, exploring my body, dancing. This was the era of the heyday of MTV. So I would see a video and I would catch a little glimpse of a dance movement. I wasn't one of those people who would learn the whole routine. I'd just catch a movement, a motif like Brad played earlier, and then I would riff off of it. I would theme and variate it until I couldn't theme and variate it anymore, or I just got too tired and sweaty to theme and variate it anymore. I needed that space to explore, both as a creative artist, but also as a human being, free from external eyes. And even though there was a mirror mostly, I watched the shadow on the wall as the shapes shifted and moved, a fuzzy image that thankfully lacked the details that would bring the critical mind to the surface. I'm convinced that the 2 years that I spent in that free exploration when I was 13 and 14, with no training in dance, just exploring movement and my relationship with my own body, that it protected my creativity later on. As I learned more from others and from the creativity of others, I had that grounding in my own exploration and my own experience so that I could receive new inspiration from others and then take it through that exploration and make it my own. So one of the ways that we nurture creativity is by giving ourselves and giving others that space for free exploration, whether it's a notebook or a skateboard park or a bedroom for shaking your booty. And also notice that I used, in my example, a model, but I used it loosely, right? I riffed off of the movements that I saw on television. I want to share another example of using a loose model. Science writer and NPR columnist Michaeline Duclef has written a book where she shares that modeling is one way that children, one of the prime ways that children learn from us. So it's a prime way to learn all things, including creativity. So she tells a story about cooking with her young child, Rosie. I think Rosie was about 3 or 4 years old, and she invited her to cook, and Rosie was so excited to cook with her mom, and they were making kebabs, and Rosie started to put chicken, and then more chicken, and then some more chicken until she had this one gigantic all-chicken kebab, and her mom thought to herself and then said to Rosie, Rosie, that's not really how we make them. We want to alternate the vegetables and the fruits and the chicken, and you can perhaps guess what happened. Rosie was very upset, and she didn't want to cook with her mom anymore, and she didn't. So fast forward a little bit, Michaeline is studying the parenting wisdom from all over the world, and she's learning about the importance of giving children more autonomy and practicing what's called minimal interference. And so she invites Rosie to cook with her again. And again, they're making the kebabs. And again, Rosie puts the chicken and the chicken and the chicken and the chicken and has this gigantic chicken kebab. But this time, her mother just motions to the place on the plate to set the chicken kebab down next to the other kebabs. And Rosie's face lights up. And then you know what happens? She actually starts to look over and imitate the model that her mother is giving her and starts to put chicken and then red pepper and then pineapple and then chicken and then red pepper and then pineapple. Because when she was given the freedom to explore her own creativity and her own learning, then she wanted to follow the model and learn from others. I want to share another example of the loose model. I also had the privilege, going back to my dance experience, of attending a Quaker school starting in 10th grade, actually just north of here, north of Washington, D.C. in Olney, Maryland. And this Quaker school, Sandy Spring Friends School, had an amazing dance program. But it wasn't amazing because it gave amazing technical skill. It was amazing because they had two dance concerts every year, mid-year and at the end of the year, entirely created and choreographed by the students. So that meant that I got to watch my peers of all levels of training in dance create the most amazing dance experiences. These journeys that they visioned and then put onto the stage. And so I didn't even think about it. I just got the message, oh, I can do that too. Whatever I can dream up, I can give it a shot and try to put it on the stage. And that was such an important modeling and nurturing of creativity. So I think it's important to have this loose model, have this modeling, but have it loose to inspire our creativity. So eventually, I started to be able to imagine things with my body that I wanted to do, but I didn't know how to do. So I decided it was time to get serious, and I started studying at a wonderful studio in Columbia, Maryland, where I would be given a model from the teacher and from the other students, and then I would practice. And then I would be given a model, and then I would practice. And a model, and I would practice. And now I was trying to get it much closer to the exact model because I wanted to have all the tools at my disposal so that when I went back into my imagination with my body, back in that very bedroom, that I could do whatever I could dream up. Soon I was dancing 15 to 20 hours a week through classes and rehearsals. And I kept doing that through college. That experience actually got me a full tuition scholarship to college, so that was good. And after college, I had a 5-year modern dance professional career dancing with regional dance companies. And then, after 15 years, I decided, perhaps inspired by some performance artist I've been reading about, to stop dancing abruptly for 1 year as an experiment. They were doing much more interesting experiments for their 1 year. Being tied to one other person 6 feet apart for a year, punching a time clock every hour for an entire year, not entering a fixed structure, any buildings for an entire year. But I just thought, I'm just going to try. I have been driven and devoted to this dancing for 15 years. And I was also hitchhiking to my own dance rehearsal. So, there was a starving artist piece of it. And I wanted some other things in my life too. And so I thought, well, let me just pause for a year and see what else life has to offer. But I couldn't stop being creative. So I asked 2 artist friends if we could make books together, and I would write, and then they would draw, and then we'd be inspired by what each other wrote or drew, and then we'd write and draw some more. So I also want to emphasize that I was bringing the discipline that I had from dance into this next endeavor. So 3 times a week I had a time for writing. Twice a week, it was on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the Twisted Branch Tea Bazaar in Charlottesville, Virginia. I would go there at 7 p.m. and I would stay there until 11 when they closed. And I may be a bit of an odd bird, but I'm sure there's some of you like this in the room. Having the music and the people talking and all the people around me was like the perfect storm that created me as the calm in the center and just channeled my creativity. And so I just wrote nonstop for those 4 hours every week. The other thing I did is I went to the children's library and I took out every picture book from all my favorite picture book artists. So I went in there and I found Maurice Sendak, and I was like, I'm taking the whole Maurice Sendak. And I came back a week later and I was like, William Steig, I'm gonna take all his books and study them and look at the form and how these author illustrators are able to get so much meaning and a story arc with just a few words and images. At one point, I even asked the children's librarian if there was a limit to the number of books you can check out. And she said, don't worry, you don't even need to know, you'll never reach it. Well, when I tried to check out my 76th picture book, they said the limit is 75 books. You can't check that out until you bring a few back. So when I brought them back, the children's librarian also said, thank you for bringing back my children's library. But that shows you that the discipline that I had gotten from nurturing my creativity through dance, right? So we have that free exploration, the loose model that we follow, and then the practice and the discipline is another way that we nurture creativity. And then the last thing is collaboration. Remember in my story about the picture books, I was collaborating with two artist friends, and we were riffing off of each other. And that was a rich way to nurture creativity. And I want to just point out that artists are always doing that. Even if you're writing a sonnet by yourself, you are in collaboration with the form of the sonnet. If you're writing a pop song, you're in relationship with the form of the song. If you're writing a novel, they all have limitations that you have to be in response to, not to mention the whole world around you that's inspiring you to do that creative exploration to begin with. So this is what nurtures creativity. Free exploration, a loose model, disciplined practice, and collaboration. This is what nurtures creativity. But I also want to talk about what creativity nurtures. What I got from that exploration of dance was an amazing amount of self-knowledge, a refuge and a sanctuary. I have to tell you, it was the cheapest and the best therapy I've ever had. And I've been to other therapy, I'm not knocking therapy, but being an artistic creator is a great way to get to know yourself and explore the questions that keep us awake at night. Also, when you're learning from others through that loose model, you're practicing the act of learning from others. Creativity also nurtures that discipline that I mentioned, and collaboration, I want to focus especially on that because that nurtures responsiveness and adaptability. It creates the experience over and over again of a foundation of contextual ethics and strategic risk-taking. I had a dance director when I danced in Charlottesville with the Zen Monkey Project, and we had this practice of asking, what does the space need when we were improvising? So you ask that question, and then you provide some movement in the space. And then there's other people in the space, and that changes the movement they're doing, and in the next moment you ask the question again, what does the space need? And you respond and change, and so you're in this constant, wonderful dance of responsiveness and change and creativity. And you can take that into so many experiences in life. You can apply that same responsiveness and adaptability in a conversation, a difficult argument you might be having with a loved one. What does the space need? And then you put into the space what you think it needs, and maybe you got it right or partly right, and maybe you didn't. And then there's another moment. What does the space need? You can bring that if you're consoling someone. What does the space need? And then you give it a shot, and you see how it lands, and then you try it again. Or continue with what you were offering if you got it right the first time. You can also bring it over longer periods of time into leadership. and that strategic risk-taking, and then responding to the changing context. So I want to give the example of the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s. And it's both true that we could take things from that context and we could try them now if we're doing social justice work of multiple kinds, and they might work. It's also true that they might not work. So, right, we learn this strategic risk-taking and this responsive adaptability in our social justice movements. We try something, and it may be that the thing that worked yesterday works today. It may be that the thing that worked yesterday doesn't work today, and so we need a new strategy. It may be even that the thing that didn't work yesterday, we need to try it again, because the context has changed, and it may work today. So these are all of the wonderful things that if you nurture creativity, creativity nurtures and gifts you with. So I invite you to tinkle on the piano, to draw in your sketchbook, to tell improvised stories to children or grandchildren at bedtime, to try an entirely new creative exploration and see what it nurtures in you. And to give also that nurturing to other people's creativity by giving them free exploration and the opportunity to practice and explore. May it be so, and may we be among those who make it so.
As we extinguish our chalice, I invite you to join me now in our community blessing with these words of David Bumbaugh. This church is dedicated to the proposition that behind all our differences and beneath all our diversity, there is a unity that makes us one and binds us forever together in spite of time, death, and the space between the stars. We pause now in silent witness to that unity.